Good evening, welcome. I'm Robin, and this is the Molten Modular Molten Music Technology live stream here, pretending to be the awesome NAMM trade show, of course, which should be happening this week, but isn't. They've bumped it to June, so instead I'm doing a whole week and a half, maybe 2 weeks of live streams, and tonight we are talking to Stochastic Instruments. Stochastic, one of those interesting words that we're going to find a lot about out this evening. You're very, very welcome to join us. We are live on YouTube, on Twitch. Hi, Twitch.
Hi, Twitch.
There's no one there, but you know, it's an up and coming format, I hear. So we're out on there. We're also on Facebook. Hi, Mum. Good to see you. So that's nice. Also,
Hi, Robin's mum. Hi, my mum, potentially, and Dad.
So, well, without further ado, then let me introduce you to who we have on this evening, and then we were going to spend some time looking at the Stochastic Inspiration Generator, which is very exciting. But before we do that, let's have a chat with our guests. Let me find the appropriate button to press. Is this one? Good evening. This is Phineas to Thornley Head. You are Mr. Stochastic, I suppose we should call you.
Well, half of. So.
Yes. But you're the man who sort of dragged this into the sort of being that it is now, as I understand it.
Yes, I had the original idea for it, I guess. Goodness me, well over a decade ago now, and it grew out of a little bit of CPD that the educational establishment that I work for did in electronics, and it was kind of the original back of the envelope idea, and it sort of grew from there, really.
Nice. Well, before you tell us any more, I'll introduce our other guest, which is here, which is Stuart MacVeigh. You're the other half of Stochastic Instruments. You do all the hard stuff, as I understand it.
Well, hardware.
Hardware, yes. Okay. Yeah. Oh, well done. Nice catch. Yeah. So let me bring you all in together. Here we are. So the two of you then got together to start Stochastic Instruments. So can you, between you, give us a little bit of a potted history as to how it all came into being?
Shall I sort of tell a story up to where Stuart came on, and then Stuart can take it from there? Yeah, well, the educational establishment I work for, DBS Institute, sent me for some CPD in electronics, and I'd done a GCSE in electronics back in the mid 15th century, and I sort of basically understood it.
Mine's an O level. Mine's an O level. I have, you know, that's showing my age.
And yeah, I kind of enjoyed it, but I didn't. I hadn't melded it really to how it could work with and for music back then. What I found as I'd been doing more and more synthesis stuff and more electronic music and teaching it more, I actually found that I did want to understand how it was working. So I elected to go on this course and did it. It was wonderful. And the thing that became apparent in almost every single lecture was that there didn't seem to be a single concept that we were taught that didn't seem to have some application in music. And it wasn't just filters or oscillators, but it was sort of, you know, binary theory and how you can permute and manipulate signals and all of this sort of stuff. And on the back of my sort of folder, I was just doodling various ideas. And one of them was the kind of first iteration, I suppose, of what's turned into Stochastic. The idea being that, as we know, the classic kind of sequencer, it fixes one thing and it parameterizes another thing. So it parameterizes pitch. If you have your little row of 16 knobs, you twiddle them. You are telling it which pitches you want, but the progression through those 16 steps is completely set. And I thought it'd be quite an interesting idea to switch that up, so that you fix the pitch. All of the pitches were provided for you. You could only have the 12 chromatic notes of the octave, but that what you parameterized was the route through them. And then I started to think about how you might want to do that. And really, it was obvious that rather than the control voltage setting the pitch of it should just set how often that occurs. Then if you take that idea, you start to think about music theory statistically. So from a music theoretic point of view, being in C means that C is the most important node, and notionally, and then you have dominant and mediant and so on. But statistically, if you were to take a piece of music that's in C, what it means to be in C is that there are probably, if you counted them all up in the whole score, there would probably be more C's than any other note. And then next most likely would probably be G, next most likely would be E, and so on, and so on, and so on. So from that perspective, you could then dial in a kind of statistical profile for the notes in a scale, and it would just sit there and it would noodle in that key. So you then take that idea and start to build on it. And I think one of the important ideas that I think made it grow was an idea of Stockhausen's, where he said, look, middle C played softly and middle C played loud are two different notes. That's a really interesting idea, because suddenly you can parameterize other aspects of a note, and you get two notes, or three or four or five or six notes, all with the same pitch, because you are parameterizing other aspects of their presentation. So that can be their onset, their offset, whether they portamento, how long they are, whether they ratchet, their octave range, and so on. So that was really it. Take as many aspects of a note as you can, put them under probabilistic control, make it performative as you can, and that was essentially stochastic. Then we had to build it, and in 2009, when I came up with it, I sketched a kind of analog solution with noise and window comparators and things like that, and it God knows how big it would have been, enormous probably. So we kind of shelved it, and then I did a version in Python, because I thought it would be a nice idea to teach myself Python. So that was how I taught myself how to code in Python. So I did that on a Raspberry Pi, and that worked with MIDI. We controlled it with my friend Chris Pratt's Dope for Dre Bank. So we had all of the parameters of the notes are assigned to knobs on the Dre Bank. So if you don't know what a Dre Bank is, it's a big kind of rectangle bit of kit with 64 knobs on it, each encoding for one of the MIDI control channels. And then you have 2 pages of that. So you have all 128 of them. So virtually every single one of those was assigned to something with sort of felt tip pen written underneath them. And that worked across MIDI. And astonishingly, it worked quite well, and it sounded quite good. So I thought, okay, well, I've sort of done it now. That's that. Let's go and do something else, because even then it was hard to do small scale fabrication. Yes. Then when did the Eurorack boom sort of start? I was kind of think it's about 2015, right? So that's when there are more than 3 or 4 companies doing it. Suddenly it starts to grow.
No, that's fair. I mean, poor old Peter Dofer was doing it for like 10 years by himself. It seemed to be just him.
Well, it was Dita and Analog Systems actually down in St Austell, just in Cornwall, and it was they derived really the Eurorack standard between them, just so that they could use their each other's stuff, and then it kind of grew from there, as we all know. So there it sat until one of my undergrads who ran and runs Omsonic, as he started to set his company up, I approached Phin and said, look, is this something we can do now? Which was, when was that, 2018, I think? 2018, 19. And he said, yeah. So Phin did version 1 of the hardware design. And then we needed someone to program it, which neither of us could do, because although I can do Python and PHP, I can't do what they call embedded coding. So it was then a case of sort of ringing around and trying to find somebody. And the studio gods must have been smiling, because I ended up phoning Stuart from Bournemouth, I think, and poor Stuart got a long and rambling description of this thing, and somehow, God only knows, managed to absolutely kick it out the park in about, well, a version 1 in about 3 weeks.
Wow.
At which point Stu needs to take over, because I don't understand what he does.
So yeah, Stuart, tell us a little bit about that, your end of that conversation, or what happened next.
Well, yes, as you say, for me, it started off as just a perfectly normal day at the university. And then, the phone call came through. It wasn't as long as you described, Finn. It was actually, it's just an arrangement for a meetup. And so you came and saw me at the university, and you laid out. I remember sitting in the room, laying out you just got description of what you wanted, and basically gave me one of your version 1 platforms, and a schematic diagram which Phin had provided, and I then had to just go away and write code for it. It had an STM microcontroller on it, which fortunately I was quite well versed in, because I teach that at the university, how to program them at bare metal level. And I just applied some of that, and we got the thing working. As you say, we got it working acceptably well in about 2 months, because I think it was the end of 2018 you came and approached me the first time.
That's about right, yes.
And by Christmas of that year, we had something basically working, and we spent the next 2 or 3 months just ironing out the bugs. And I think it was finally called good. Must have been about February, March, April 2019.
That's about right.
Yeah,
that's about right.
And I think that at that point, I actually put the project down, because once you had a fully working rig, I'd let you go off with it.
There was a lot. I have to point out, there was a lot of me asking for extra stuff.
Yeah.
And Stuart's patience and not thumping me was quite extraordinary. So yeah, thank you for that. So that's mid to late 2018, I suppose.
That was first contact. Yeah.
Yes. At which point, then we had something, but then of course it had to start to be manufactured, and some of them got out with Omsonic. They were definitely made, but I think it wonderfully, it seems to have resonated with people, and people do seem to really like it. And I think we've been very lucky to find something that's kind of at the sweet spot between being a bit experimental and a bit off the wall, but being constrained enough so that you can do something perfectly tonal with it, or perfectly bonkers with it, and it's got enough of that kind of nice John Cage vibe going, but enough music theory, if you happen to know about that, to be performative, and it will just noodle if you don't have that, and that's fine too. So I think it somehow managed to negotiate a sweet spot between the experimental end and a more kind of conventional end, and have applications in EDM as well.
Well, I think from my point of view, I think I saw it early on, and I immediately knew that this was something that I wanted to try. I think, trying to think back to my reasoning at the time, is that I had a very small rig at that point, and I enjoyed the Turing machine tremendously. That was one of my favorite things. Matched with the quantizer was what I would use most of the time. I'm trying to think if I had any other sequencers, but I was definitely on the look for other things to create melodies with. And certainly coming from a normal musical background into Eurorack, where you suddenly have no pitch at all, you have just signals, and music was actually quite a struggle until you get a little bit more relaxed about it. You stumble about a bit because you don't have a keyboard, you don't have proper notes and bits and pieces, and so there's something about that keyboard on the front, if you like, the sliders that represent notes, that immediately said music to me. And because it was something to do with randomness, which is the Turing machine also, I knew that it would be randomly creating something in there that I had some kind of control over. So that was kind of the depth that I went to, not very deep, but it was immediately appealing. And what fascinates me, we'll look at the module in close up in a moment, but what fascinates me from what you've said is how did you pull a 64 knob controller down into this interface? Because the interface is quite genius. How did that occur?
Well, that's very, very kind of you to say. The other thing I want to say is it's actually thank you, because I knew we were onto something where when another friend of mine, Ollie Thompson, kind of texted me, said, bloody hell, look, Robin Vincent's seen it. And I kind of looked at it and thought, wow, this is fantastic. So yeah, thank you. And your support has been wonderful, actually. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, a very good question. Lots of secondary and tertiary feature functions is the short answer, but with a lot of careful thinking about which are the most important features that you need switching it on and just getting it noodling, and which can then be, I don't want to say they're less important, because they're not, they are just as important, but we tend to come to music through pitch first.
Yes.
And then, those other aspects then become salient in the composition if you arrange matters that way. We certainly knew that if we were to have literally one knob, one function, it would be enormous. It would be two Dre bank sizes, because it used most of the knobs and buttons of both pages on it. And I think also thinking about the fact that some of the functions are global and some of the functions are note specific. So of course the durations are global. Portamento is global, for example, and what the TrEGs are doing are global. But in some senses, some of the most important functions, other than pitch, are the note-specific functions, because they allow you to create a harmonic context for it. So just being able to, for example, octave transpose a specific note means that will draw the ear into that note being a tonic, being the root of the scale. Just because if you set it low, that's how your ear is conditioned to hear it through Western musical theory. So things like that, kind of thinking, okay, well, I'm definitely going to need that, but I probably will have set my loop up first, and then I can go in and get to a second layer. But I think for me as a pianist, the most important thing was that keyboard layout. So I'm pleased that hit you, because Eurorac's very different, isn't it? If you come from a playing tradition, very different indeed. Not lesser. I don't think lesser at all. It's just different, and what you focus on is different. It becomes, I think, one of the reasons I love it is because it's much more about process, and process is something that's fascinated me for years in music. So coming from heroes like Steve Reich and Michael Nyman, where he talks about process music in his experimental music book, that kind of stuff. But also, of course, Bach. It's the hidden algorithm of it that is endlessly fascinating.
I mean, one of the common questions that I get when I'm talking to sort of beginners about Eurorack is that they talk about pitch and they say, well, how do I play a C? To which my answer is, I have no idea. I have a frequency knob. It could be anything. I don't possess perfect pitch, I'm afraid. I don't really see things in those ways. So it can be any pitch, and it's interesting because of this interface is an octave of notes, if you like, but they're not. This isn't C, although it's labeled C. It's not necessarily C. Exactly. It doesn't have anything to do with C. Exactly. But they are relational to each other in an octave that we understand. As long as we have something relatively tuned to something, then it kind of works. And that's one of the fascinating things about Eurorack, is that I'm never playing in a particular key. If I'm lucky, I've tuned the oscillators, and that means they're going to play together somehow musically. But that's not always the case either. So it's really interesting when you see things like this. And also, I mean, there's other things like the Harmonaig from Instruo, which is a very musical and interval related module, that they use all this nomenclature that we understand in music, and actually it's irrelevant. It just gives us an idea of of how to grapple with it as opposed to actually saying what is happening, if that makes sense. What I would like to do just very quickly, I want to do like the most basic demo that I can think of, or we can think of between us, just on it, just so that people know what it is that we're talking about. And it's already fascinating to me because you're talking about things, because I've had one now for a couple of years, which one would assume that means I know all about it. I've scratched the surface. I've literally done the basics and have not looked into it any deeper, because I know that I can push a couple of sliders and it does exactly what I expect it to. And that's actually all I need to do at that point. And there's a stack and tons of functionality in here that I've never got to, that we hope to explore a bit tonight, which is quite exciting. But what I'll do, I'll just bring the thing into view. Hopefully people can see this, and I will just calm it down a little bit, and I'll just use one thing. I'll use the STO over here.
Oh, no, hang on, I've got to bigify this, haven't I?
So let me just going to bring some noise in. Okay, so I'm going to stop it running. I'm just going to bring all these notes down to the bottom. Is there a way of resetting it? Is that a function?
Yes, if you long hold run and press loop.
Okay. So
there you
then,
go.
like, so it's not going to do nothing. Like if I press run. Okay, it's not doing anything. Right. Super.
That's a kind of standby mode, I suppose. In that it doesn't have anything in memory at the moment because you've reset it, and therefore it doesn't know to do anything. It doesn't know what probabilities you want. So you have to kind of prod it to do something. So I suppose if we start probably at the beginning and we just raise a C, for example, maybe if we start there.
Yeah, totally. So just so you know what's going on, I've got hang on. Is that the right one? Why is that quite so high? Hang on. Oh, there we go. There's something in there somewhere. So I do have a droning oscillator. I'm just going to plug the trigger back in to the envelope just to stop that sounding. So these two cables here, I've got one going into 1 volt per octave on the oscillator and the other one going to the VCA. There's no envelope in between because apparently I learnt today there are envelopes inside this thing. I had no idea about it.
Oh, yes.
And in fact,
yes, TrEGs.
Yeah, because you've changed the front panel, it's actually got things like attack, decay and stuff written on here. I'm looking at that going, well, what's that about?
This is the manual on a panel, which is, I wish I'd come up with that phrase. Someone marvelously came up with it on ModWiggler. And yeah, basically everything it does is now on there. So you can see what it's doing. But yeah, we'll come to TrEGs in a bit. I think if we get it just chirping away first.
So yeah, so here's our keyboard, our row of notes. We've got white notes at the bottom and black notes at the top. You could say it's arranged, a bit like a keyboard. And as your man says, push up C. Let's see what happens.
So the first thing you'll notice is that the further up you push it, the more often it will fire.
So you already know at this point that this is going to be great. You just go, yeah, no, that's exactly right. Because now I want to push up something else. I'll push up the G, and it will go between them. Look at that. I mean, it appears to the user just simplicity and purity. What more than that could I possibly need?
Well, maybe if we start with a scale or something, that might be a good way to do it. So if you want to dial in a preferred scale, let's say.
I always like the B at the top.
Yeah, and if you maybe contour those a little bit so that some are more likely than others. But yeah, there we go. All right. So what do we want to look at first? Rhythm or range? Do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is your first week with this module. Is you just do that, and then you're ignoring these knobs so far because you're not entirely sure that they're going to mess something up. But yes, we have at the top here range, which is interesting, and down here we have timing, I suppose. Let's have a look at the range then, shall we? So you've added.
Well, just.
Yeah, go.
It has to have a default. It has to know where to start. So,
Yes.
It sets 16ths as a default, and it's defining one clock as 1/16th. So essentially, that's every time it gets a clock, it will fire. And it's defining 8-foot pitch, so standard pitch where middle C is middle C. It's not up or down an octave or two. That's its sort of starting point. And one of the main tricks that I think you have to get in using it is to think that everything you dial in is pulling it away from those defaults, because we have to have a default in there, otherwise it can't calculate the probability. So it's going to start at 8-foot pitch and 16ths, and as soon as you start to dial more stuff in, one way to think about it is that you are pulling probability away from that default.
Okay.
So if you put in a little bit of 16-foot and a little bit of 32-foot, because it's quite high to start with.
Yeah. So I'm just going to first of all turn those down to 0, so that I've got a place that I'm starting from, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that I can just turn up the 16th, as you say.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there it goes.
There you go. And you got the riff from Sweet Child of Mine by Guns N' Roses perfectly there. Once, I should point out.
See, that's just lovely. It's a beautiful thing. I've fallen back in love with my STO oscillator that I've fallen out with for a long while. It's been on the shelf, and as I was putting this rig together today, I thought, oh, I'll get one of those out. And it has these moments of loveliness.
It's music theory, though. I mean, SIG is wonderful, but it's only leveraging music theory. It's music theory that makes this so powerful, because it's a thing there in the universe, and you can tap into it, and it does this for us. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Anyway, so those ranges are applying to everything that it does. Every note that you're going to pull up there are affected by that. So those are global ranges. We'll look maybe a little bit later at note-specific stuff. So that will start to give more of a tonal context to it. Well, maybe we should look at a little bit of simple rhythm first. So those are the three most important things: so the pitch, the range, or compass, if you want to call it that, and the rhythm. So if you look at the vertical column to the right, the main functions are just divisions of 16. So 16, eighths, quarters, halves, whole note, double note.
Yeah, I'm just turning all those down to 0. So the default is 16ths, isn't it? Is that correct?
16ths or semiquavers, yes.
And so again, we're pulling away from that. Is that the
That's
the
correct,
idea?
yes. So what you'll notice is if you start to turn up quavers or eighths, it won't immediately switch to being constantly eighths. There will still be 16ths there. You'll only get completely eighths if you turn it all the way up and you turn 16ths down.
Okay.
So now you're starting to get rhythm.
So if I want to emphasize the 16ths a bit more, I can turn that up.
Yes.
So
And
when
of
we're
course,
talking about... Sorry.
Sorry, go on.
So I guess one of the big questions is that when we're talking about probability, and we're talking about stochastic ness, what does that mean? I suppose is my question. But I just want to frame that with on the Korg SQ64 sequencer, it has a stochastic mode, and that was, I think, the first time I quite understood what it was supposed to do. So rather than being random, it it essentially looked at the note that it was on and chose a couple away from it. You know, it sort of rolled a dice on whether it's going to go up a couple of notes or 2 notes or 1 note or back
Yes.
the other way. So it wasn't like a random sample and hold of a piece of noise where it could
Yes.
come up with any value. It could only seem to come up with a value which was near to the existing one and relevant to it, I suppose. Is that a simple explanation of what's the probability
Absolutely,
nature of
yeah.
this? Yeah.
What stochastic is doing is a little bit different than that, but essentially that. But the word stochastic on its own, it means controlled randomness, controlled probability. So if you think about dice rolling, if you have a die and you roll that, you have a 1 in 6 chance of getting any of those values. That's purely probabilistic. If you now imagine weighting that die, so you put a bit of lead on one side,
Right.
then some of those numbers become more or less likely. That's when you start to tip into something that you might want to call a stochastic process, where it's weighted randomness. And that's essentially what's going on here. You're right. It's at least one step on from the completely random sample and hold noise idea. If you put sample and hold noise through a quantizer, it will basically sound the same as SIG with all of the values up, but they're all equiprobable. They are all equally likely to occur. And that, of course, isn't how music theory works. You could argue, I suppose it's almost like a kind of, I suppose you might want to say diatonic serialism, if you wanted to call it that. But it's not how tonal theory works, because tonal theory is about some notes having more weight to them than others. So, but yeah, what you say is absolutely correct. Yeah, the idea of the sliders on the module is just to weight what it's going to do into the direction you want, be it rhythmically or tonally or harmonically or whatever.
I think we're all just enjoying the little tune it's playing as well. So a quick question then, because I know on the Turing machine you can whack one of the knobs all the way up and it captures the current loop. Is that what the loop button does?
Yes.
I'm making a guess because I've never actually used it. And how much does it capture?
Up to 18 events, but you have to think differently. If you think about a convention sequencer, you pre-compose what you're going to do from the first note forward. So you have a starting note in the riff, and you it's cycling through, and you decide what you think it should do next, and you program that in, and that's your loop. And that works because you did it. In this case, of course, Stochastic is doing it. So, look, let's take the Guns N' Roses thing. It was just chirping away with those notes, and they just happened to hit on that riff. That's actually quite a good example for how the loop works here, because you hear that and you go, oh, goodness me, that's fantastic. And the point is you then have to capture it.
Yes.
But what's happening is Stochastic is in effect completing the phrase. You only hear the context of it as a musical sentence, if you like, when you hear the last word, because you don't know what it's going to say beforehand.
Yeah.
So when you hear it do something really cool, that's when you reach out and you grab the loop. But what it means is that Stochastic is thinking from the beginning of the phrase backwards. From the end of the phrase backwards,
right, gotcha,
rather than the beginning of the phrase forwards. That's the basic idea. So you would sort of sit there and go, it's going to noodle until you hear something you like, and then you grab the loop. And you just do that by holding loop and pressing run.
When I hold it.
Yeah, hold loop and press run. There you go. And I can't see if it's flashing or not. Did you get it? Oh, I know. Yeah, you're in tertiary functions. Just short press run once. Okay, yeah. So just do it again quickly. So you just hold loop and snap touch. There you go.
Okay, yeah, I'm with you.
So it's now flashing, and you've grabbed the loop, and it's going to default to be 4 events long, not 4 tops long, 4 events long. However long they were, they happen to be probabilistically. If you now press loop, it will start to loop on what you captured. Loop will go solid. There you go.
That's interesting. I have no idea at what point it captured, but that's quite interesting. Let me try that again. So with its flashing, I'm in potential loop mode.
You are in stochastic mode there,
Oh,
and it is waiting for you to grab another one. And even that's rather pretty.
Yeah.
You can actually grab another loop whilst you're playing a loop as well, by just pressing the button again while you're in loop mode, because what in the background, the stochastic operation is still going on.
Nice, yeah.
That was completely Stuart's idea. I didn't think of that, and I love it. It's one of my favourite things it does.
So that's the loop you captured before. If you press press loop and run in quick succession, like you did the first time,
Gotcha.
you've caught yourself a new loop because the stochastic operation was still ongoing.
Yeah.
Isn't that brilliant?
See, what a beautiful thing. Now, I'm sure you can do angry music with this, but that's just never. I mean, my most common combination is this with the Surface, the qubit Surface, playing a string, because although it has lots of different models inside, that's the only one I ever play with, and putting the two together is just, it's heaven. And you can pretend to be an ambient artist with that all day. I could be Anne Annie, and I could just sit those two modules up in a case, and it's having a lovely time. I mean, I could add a clouds or what's the other one? The beads, and you know, I've aced it. And that's the
one of my favourite comments that someone made about it was, what was it? You've made rings into clouds cool again.
Yeah.
Which I thought was wonderful.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, because of course the Surface is, because I was a little bit too new at this. I bypassed the whole rings in the clouds business, partly because I didn't like clouds at all. I did not get on with it.
Really?
It drove me nuts. I thought, because I would spend a long time with it going, this is supposed to be awesome, and I hate it. Why is it awesome?
I love clouds.
I know. Most people do.
Everyone loves clouds. Yeah.
I'm quite on my own in that. I've got on better with beads, funnily enough, and there's actually things in that I understand have happened because I did something. Whereas in clouds, it's like I have no idea.
Yeah,
but,
yes.
But yeah, so what am I saying? Oh, I don't know. But yeah, no, I understand that, because it is a beautiful aspect of Eurorack, is that whole resonating string kind of thing through some kind of granular or lots of reverb, which I've got on here. It's something about it which really resonates with us, of course. And this definitely feeds into it. But the important thing about it is that you really do feel you're having an input. You feel like you're doing part of the work. You're making choices.
Yes.
You're making decisions which actually affect it. So I can make it go a bit minor, which is interesting.
This was, for me, one of the really, really important things, not just with Stochastic, but I mean, the whole kind of company ethos is, again, it's about sweet spots. In this case, the sweet spot between process and performance. So some of the 60s pure process pieces, so pendulum music or aria and Fontana mix, those kinds of things, which are wonderful, they're incredible pieces. But once you set it into motion, you just become the audience member. So it's sort of, okay, I'm done now. And it's lovely, it's amazing to listen to. But then if you come from a pianistic tradition, you kind of want to get your hands dirty and sort of be doing stuff. So
that's what filters are for. I can turn that off. That's my job for the whole 20-minute performance.
That's purely performative and not process based. So it's like if I want to sit down and play Bach or something, then I've got the most complex musical object in the universe, a piano sitting in front of me, or a violin sitting in front of me, or a trombone sitting in front of me, which are sonically vastly more complicated than anything in Eurorack. It's for me personally, the sound of Eurorack has always been secondary to its focus on process and performable process.
Interesting.
So
yeah.
if I want to do like fingers stuff, I'm going to sit down at a piano. If I want to do process stuff, I want to take that to a modular, but then my fingers are getting itchy because there isn't a keyboard in there, right? So it's about finding something where I can do the process bits that I adore, but I can still sneak in a bit of the kind of, finger stuff as well.
Yeah.
But and specifically pitch, and not just filters and things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, part of the I'm finding as my rig grows, that I think my enjoyment comes with, I like to set something going that I can then add other things to.
Yes.
I mean, back when I was back before Eurorack, in those days, you'd try to find a drum loop, or you'd program a bit of drums, and then you'd add something to that, you'd add something, and you build and you layer. In Eurorack, I don't tend to do that with drums. Drums tends to be something you'll drop in later on. So I usually start with something like this, just have something running. And you then feed off that and start to add in other things. And it becomes, as you say, you're working on this instrument as a bit of a process, as opposed to trying to write something. I'm just, I'm going to put some kind of bass line. How am I going to generate that today? Oh, I don't know. I'll do it like this, and so on. And
I heard this put so beautifully only a couple of days ago. I was disgracefully lucky enough to study composition under Michael Phineas, who, for my money, is literally one of the greatest living composers that we have. And he was interviewed in lockdown about a year ago, and it's on YouTube. You can go and watch it. Definitely go and watch it. I'll put the link up later. It's a wonderful interview. And he says this one amazing thing where he goes, if you give the same little bit of material, he's talking about notation, it can be anything, it can be a drum loop or a sample or whatever. If you give the same bit of material to 10 composers, you get 10 different pieces, of course. But the reason is because of the questions they ask of that material. And I thought that's such a wonderful encapsulation, because what you're doing is sort of poking it and prodding it and saying, what can it do for me? And what the asking questions of it is about that thing. We ask the questions that are relevant to us. So the approach that you will take to a material is the approach that is relevant to you as whether you are a breakbeat DJ or a pianist, or your dad's an organist, isn't he? An organist. Yeah. Well, and that's really where the different pieces come out. It's the interaction of how you interrogate that thing with the kind of processes you bring with it. And I just thought that was a wonderful, wonderful description.
Yeah. So what else can we do with this fella then while we have it here? I mean, we have multiple channels which we'll look at, but the one thing that I'm keen to hear about is the inbuilt envelopes. How can we make use of those?
Well, I'll tell you what, while we're in loop world for a second, should we just look at the last aspect of the loop bit, and then we'll look at the TrEGs?
Totally. Okay. Let me bring the thing in. Yeah.
All right. So remember we talked about defaults. So it's defaulting to 8-foot pick, 16ths, and no notes. It also has a default loop length of 4 events, not 4 clocks. So so that means if the rhythmic lengths are longer, that's still 4 events, even if they're longer events. If you long hold loop, you'll go into the secondary page, which is the loop page. You keep long holding until there you go. Now you see that all of the lights have gone out for the primary functions, and you're just seeing 4 lights lit up now. Those no longer mean what they used to mean. They are now telling you that the loop is 4 events, long.
Yeah.
So what you now want to do is start wiggling the tempo knob and the 16th knob. So if you start with tempo, and what you'll notice is that there you go. Now look, do you see you're lighting up light? If you can, that's right. Try and get your hand out of the way. what you're doing is increasing the loop length now. So if you stick on, if you just go all the way clockwise, so you've only got one light lit.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on. No, yeah, you're not in. Yeah.
So I need to
if we start
that and
looping.
that.
Yes.
Is it that and that?
Where are we? Oh, I
You
think
just-
you. I think you stopped it.
Did I kill it?
Press run again. Press run again. There you go. Now, press loop once.
That's
There you
that
go.
one
There you go.
note.
Right. So there's your loop of 1. Now, long hold loop.
There's
There you go.
note
Okay.
1.
Now start moving the tempo knob. There you go. Now you got 2. Now you can wind that all the way back to light up to the full 18 notes that you have available. That's all of the lights lit.
Oh, I see the lights are lighting on the notes. I didn't spot that at all.
Yes.
Nice.
Okay, now if you just wind back a few, so we've got a few different notes. There you go. Now, move your fingers across to 16ths and wind, and just come back a few. So now you're kind of moving the window open. Maybe light there you go, there you go. Do 3. Light 3. Okay, now go to tempo again and wind that clockwise. No, clockwise. Go the wrong way. There you go. There you go. Now you notice that they're flashing. That's now the retrograde. It's playing the loop backwards. So effectively your start point is behind your end point, or in front of your end point, whichever way around you think about it.
I'm with you.
So the point there is that the loop becomes performative as well. And it's back to that, again, kind of back to that Phineas idea of it being about exploring materials and asking questions of materials.
That's nice. I get out of it just by pressing things, I suspect.
That's right. Yes, and that So you're now looking at it. It's still looping, but you're looking at its kind of main page. Okay, you want to look at TrEGs then?
Yeah, let's do that.
I'm not sure why more people don't do it, but it struck me that again, actually, this came out of Stuart. Stuart, what was the thing about? We were talking about the fact that the triggers didn't have to be just binary on-off, right? They could be variable voltages.
Which one was that? Sorry.
So the idea of the TrEG, so meaning that we could get variable voltage out of the trigger as it was, the trigger outputs, as well as the CD outputs, because of the chip that you'd picked.
Yes. Well, I used a dual channel DAC, so we were able to create envelopes as well as the control voltage all from one chip, and it enabled us to shape the trigger envelope as well, rather than just having it a simple square pulse.
Yeah. So the trigger output is what you're saying. As you call them TrEGs, trigger envelope generators, I guess is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, yeah. Okay, I get that. I can see that that's quite clever. Do you ever have any problems with that not firing some things, because trigger inputs can sometimes be a pain in the arse?
No, we've never come across that. It was something we worried about, and we tested it on my rig here. we have something at work that I started called the Modular Research Group. So we kind of periodically meet up and everyone just brainstorms ideas and comes up with stuff. So that was nice too, because we have teaching modular rigs at work. And it means that we can incorporate students and staff into beta testing stuff. So we've got loads and loads of modules there we can test it on. And we went through digitally triggered modules. So like rings is a good example, where it's taking a pulse and triggering something digitally with that. Analog trigger modules, so they could be envelope generators or low pass gates or whatever. And then kind of variable input CV control things like a filter cutoff or whatever. And just made sure that we had tailored the decay function of the trigger so that it had a sufficiently hard onset to trigger everything in its default mode. But then if you dialed in something that was more envelope-like, then the VCAs and VCFs and LPGs would respond appropriately. So we haven't found anything yet that it doesn't work.
I mean, I have to say, because this is going straight into a VCA, and it's having not getting any. You sometimes get those clicks at the beginning of if you just go straight into a VCA from a trigger or a gate, and not getting any of that at all. It does sound at the moment very low pass gate like, doesn't it?
So that's a direct VCA you have it going into there.
Yes, just into the veils.
So let's put some decay on it to start with. So you'll notice on the range button, so the 5 in a row there. Okay, here we go. Let's do that. I'm going to look at mine as well here. It's my eyes. So if you hold down the TrEG functions are on the third layer, the tertiary functions. So they're controlled by holding down run. So if you hold down run and you dial up some 16, so that's decay.
Hold down run.
So hold down run and now dial up some 16-foot pitch or decay. So that's the
oh yeah, I can see
that one. Yeah, one that says decay. Just dial that up. Let's see what it does. There you go. So maybe put it at about 12 o'clock. There you go.
You're actually in the tertiary mode menu at the moment.
Oh yes, you've long held again, which is fine.
Yeah.
So
menus are my favourite thing, as everybody knows. But,
well, while it's in that mode, it means you can freely turn any of the knobs, and it will take effect as you turn them.
So essentially, we're in envelope mode, is what you're saying, yeah?
Yes.
So I can turn the
well, amongst other things, envelope and weird rhythm mode.
Okay. See, there's a bit of attack.
There you go. Now, this is a really good point to go back to that Stockhausen point. Do you see how you're hearing them as different notes now, even though it's the same pitch?
So how is the attack different on different notes? Or isn't it?
It isn't. It's either being selected or not. So we spent ages kind of deciding what the sort of optimal time and slope characteristics would be. So it's a proportion of the note length. So Stochastic knows ahead of time that it's picked, I don't know, let's say an 8th note. So if you have an attack on that, it will take but only an attack, it will take the whole duration of that 8th to ramp up. Out of that idea came what for me is one of its best features, and it was one that I didn't think of. It came out of Stuart asking me really tough questions about what would happen if more than one of those got selected. So, Stuart, do you want to kind of talk through that? How they multiply?
How they modulate the envelope?
Yeah, where more than one of them fires at the same time.
Yeah, it's basically turning the knob, the probability that a certain envelope will occur. So at the moment, you've got the attack and decay knobs set to about 12 o'clock, it looks like.
Yeah, the attack
which means
slightly less, yeah.
Yeah, so they both have about a 50% chance of being selected. So after it randomly selects a note and an offset and a duration and all that for each one, it will then also decide, it randomly selects whether it will apply an attack and or a decay based on the probability set by those knobs while you're in this mode. And yeah, they are two individual probabilities. So sometimes you might get just the attack or just the decay, or sometimes both together, or maybe neither. If you were to say turn one of them up to 100%, then you will get that envelope will happen on every single note.
So, oh no, you can't see my hands, can you?
Yeah, no, I can, but the crowd can't.
Oh no, it just looks like I'm doing random abstract shapes, but yeah, for Robin's benefit, it's either doing that. Yeah. Oh right, okay, right. So that would be an attack only. That would be a decay only. That would be both of them, and then neither would be just a ping there. So if they were all kind of equiprobable, then you've got, I suppose, a 1 in 4 chance of any of those combining.
It's just another level of beauty. This is crazy. I can't believe I've not. It's my own fault. I'm too bloody busy, right? Too many things vying for my attention, and so I've never looked at this any deeper, as I say, than selecting a few notes and going, "That's lovely. I'll just move on and do something else." This is just superb. I love that. Is it CV controllable by any chance? The tactic?
No, it's not. That's a really common question. Loads of people ask that, and it's not for kind of a couple of reasons. I mean, first, I really want it to be performed, and what I've noticed is that a lot of people that'd be a common question people will ask, and then they'll use it for a week or 2 or 3, and then they'll come back to me and go, yeah, I get it now, I see what you mean, because I want you to be going in and doing it with your fingers. That's kind of the first reason. So if you like a philosophical, musicological reason. Yeah. There's also a technical reason, which is that if you think about all of the potential parameters, the number of jack inputs you would need, and then attenuverters on those, and we're back to Dre Bank territory. It would just be absolutely enormous. So, so no.
Just trying to be clever. Bear with me.
Do you want to try some ratcheting?
Good Lord, stop it! So now I've just molted in the filter to give that a little bit of envelope too.
Okay, I'll tell you what. We'll build up to it. Turn down attack and decay to start with. So we're back to pop, 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 pop. Okay. Now, if you just put in some decay first. So we're going to have decay most of the time. Let's say 12 o'clock. There you go. And we've got some longer note durations there. Now, turn up 4-foot pitch, so ratchet.
Oh, yeah.
Put that to about 12 o'clock.
Oh, yeah, that's
there you go. There you go. That's quite a slow clock, isn't it?
Yes.
The effect might actually be more prominent if you increase the clock rate, but then we can keep the groove by selecting slower durations.
Yeah, sure.
Although, yeah, but not on this page though, because you'll get weird irrational rhythms.
Let me just turn. I might have lost.
You're in the menu. That's why
I've done something else now.
Yeah. You have to single press run to come out of the, and that's it. And then you can adjust the tempo with the tempo knob.
Yeah.
Okay.
So turn up the tempo, but then, there you go, right, good. But now select some slower notes.
That doesn't sound bad, actually.
That's nice.
Okay, put in some slow ones as well, because I'm going to show you something in a second, which is rather fun.
Well, I've turned up 2.
Oh, blimey, that is fast. All right, maybe come down a bit. All of those are constant 16ths, though, aren't they?
No. All right, you lot can go home. I'm just going to sit here and play with this. Is the filter messing
Sorry,
up?
someone said in the chat, why is he shouting? I'm sorry, it's loud in here. Maybe I should turn this down a bit.
It's all right where I am, I think.
Sorry. Nothing bad about weird, irrational rhythms, I promise. I've only just started looking at the chat. It's rather fun.
All right, what am I after? What am I trying to do now?
All right.
Is that all right?
Oh, I know what you've done. You're in forced bar line mode. Okay, can you long hold run? And yes, what you're going to need to do is, can you move tempo back so that that 4 lights are lit?
I've got 4 lights here.
That's right, yes. And can you move 16ths so that the 1/4 light lights up?
Oh,
there you go. Now you're in 4/4. You put it into one. You change the time signature to be in 1/16.
Gotcha.
I can hear the ratcheting happening now.
Yes. Now you can hear the ratcheting.
Hit run
there
to
you
put
go.
it back into out of the menu.
Yeah. So just press run once.
Yeah.
There you go. Now listen.
Yeah.
First time I heard that, absolutely floored me. And again, that was totally Stuart's idea about combine. What does it do under conditions where attack, decay, and ratchet probabilistically co-occur? And I totally hadn't thought of that. So a really good tip for anybody at home who is thinking about designing stuff, or it doesn't have to be modular, whatever you're doing, is don't be shy about talking through the ideas with someone who's going to ask you tough questions, because it's like that Michael Phineas thing. You're exploring the material, but you're being prodded to explore the material, because you will ask, when you are asked questions that you hadn't thought of, you've then got to come up with a solution to it, and you won't see every question. You just won't, because you're inside the box. You need someone else's perspective on it. And often the best things the best features of something will come from having to defend or rethink what you thought you had got right.
So, how do I get back into the envelope ratchet menu?
Okay, so go to press long hold run again. That takes you to all of the knobs are now doing their tertiary functions. But it's not just the ones. It's not just the ones that are doing TrEG. So ADP RL. The vertical controls are doing different
that's
things
what I
as
messed
well.
up with last time. So at the moment I've got, so I can bring the ratchets down again.
That's right.
And because I put in longer notes from before,
they will now be. It'll be more apparent what they are doing. Yes.
Yes. And the one we haven't touched is portamento in the middle here, so a bit of glide between things.
The general rule is
never use portamento. That's my rule.
Well, the general rule is that tertiary functions, which are the run page, if you like, are about level and TrEG, and secondary functions, which is the long hold loop page, is about pitch stuff. So the 8-foot one in the page that you're on at the moment is not portamento, it's pause.
It's pause. See, I need my bleeding reading glasses or something. It is small in there.
It is small. I'm sorry, my eyes are not what they used to be either. But that is absolutely the biggest I could get it on there.
No, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, as with anyone who's watching me sort of scratch my head a little bit, this is normal for modules. It's also very normal to have layers to stuff, and it's nobody's favourite thing in the world, but it's a compromise that we understand because of the size restrictions and the amount of functionality we want in something. Often requires some kind of level and some kind of fudging around with fingers and menus. It's a reality, and it's a matter of learning something, the same as you do anything else, and then it becomes easy.
Absolutely.
Whereas at the moment, I have no clue, so I'm sort of messing it around a little bit. But the opposite to that is that the functionality that I am discovering during this evening's little session is extraordinary. I had no idea honestly had no idea it was there.
Yeah, I mean,
it's great.
I'd add, I think, a couple of things. I mean, first, I could not agree more. It's an instrument, and you have to learn an instrument. The first, goodness me, how long do you have to practice a violin before you're even remotely listenable to? I mean, it contravenes the Geneva Convention until grade 4, doesn't it? So
yeah,
it is an instrument, and the more you practice with it, the more you play it, the quicker you get to dive in to do the thing that you want to do. I think that's the first thing I'd say. The second thing is that we very carefully put those absolutely core fundamental functions on the top surface. So if you don't want to dive in to secondary or tertiary functions, you absolutely don't have to. And actually, as you found, you've been using it for 2 years.
Yeah.
Perfectly happy as Larry.
Perfectly fine, yeah. Perfectly fine. Yeah. The only thing I never quite understand is the clock. As it always seems very fast. I mean, that because I've probably got it or had it in a mode that was inappropriate. So I'm always having to clock it slowly. I take a clock divider, what's it called, a switch or a thingy that a clock divider of some kind in order to control the clock, because otherwise it's really super fast. But now I think I could probably find where to turn that down a little bit. So that's
I mean, it goes down to what is it? It's
32 beats a minute.
32, yeah, 32 BPM.
Yeah,
I
think it goes up very high, like 250 beats a minute at the highest, I think.
And you can clock it. That's internally. You can clock it at audio rate. If you send it a square wave into its TrEG in, it will act as an oscillator. If you clock it in audio rate, you have a noise oscillator effectively. And if you then hit loop, you have basically a wavetable designer, because the levels of the faders then become the shape of the wavetable, if you like.
Yeah,
There's all sorts of fun you can have doing that.
God, no, that's nuts. That's for another thing. Music is too loud, somebody's saying. Hang on, let me just turn that down a little bit.
Right. That's largely why I was shouting. I didn't know if it was just my machine. Sorry.
Okay, hopefully that's a little bit better for people.
There we go.
But
Right.
it is helpful if people in the chat do let us know if there's something we need to fix in that regard. So, I mean, is there a lot more within the module itself which is, you know, suitable telly, or should we move on to layers? Would that be interesting? I mean, we've already gone through an hour.
Yeah, entirely up to you. I mean, it would be nice to look at the individual note pitches, because that's quite a powerful function.
Cool. Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, if you come out, so just single press run, and put in some faster material, so 16ths and 8ths and quarters.
Yeah.
Okay, that's nice. Now, just close down all of the 32 and the 16, and just go for 8s, 8-foot pitch at the minute. So we're going to have quite an enclosed little material, and it's just going to sit in its own octave. There we go.
So
Okay.
I'm just adjusting the sound a little bit.
All good?
I think so. Maybe
Okay.
they're just fussy in the chat. That's all it is. It sounds lovely where I am. I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, go.
Okay. Long hold loop. Okay, so now you're in secondary function mode. Now, if you start to move one of the faders that you had selected probabilistically, so I what's up at the moment? Not C. Let's do G. Do G or F.
So G, yeah.
If you move that, just pull that down to the bottom. So do you see what you've done? You have told it to drop only F by 2 octaves. All of the others are still at 8-foot pitch, but Fs specifically are dropped.
Or G, which is the one that I moved.
Or whichever one. Sorry, is it just? Sorry, it's G. I'm sorry. Yes, G. Now, what that's done.
It's now too high.
There you go. Yeah. What that has done has changed the harmonic context, because just because it's laid out from C, because we tend to, you know, Monday morning 9 o'clock piano lesson, there's middle C. We think from C. So the layout naturally, C is at the bottom of most of the stuff you're going to put in, let's say, because it's just because it's the lowest note there. So you tend to hear things in C context. If you now take one of the other notes, a non-C note, and you drop that, you will then hear it in that context. So, for example, I'm not sure which notes you had up, but I think it was C, D, F, G, and B, wasn't it?
Yeah, or B flat. But I can take.
Right, okay.
So if I take D down.
If you take D down, and let's say you only had white notes up, as it were, pulling that D down is going to switch you from effectively being in C major, or if you know about modes, C Ionian, you pull that D down, you suddenly go to D Dorian, or only because your ear is drawn to the D being the lowest note, and therefore the kind of contextual root note of the noodling that's going on.
Yes, gotcha. So again, as you say, it's performative. I can sit here and I can change what's going on through my fiddlings.
Exactly. And it means that you can kind of do, I suppose, some sort of, you know, modal interchange kind of thing by just having it noodling on whichever notes you've selected, but focusing on, I don't know, first C, then E, then F as being the bass, and therefore the root, the contextual root of the mode that you hear. you're again exploring what is essentially the same material, but from a different perspective.
Oh, it also has to be a note that I've previously selected. Yeah. I mean, because there is, it does get a little bit complex because the sliders no longer represent the notes that I originally selected.
Yes, exactly. So you have to remember which ones you had up. Obviously, you know, we couldn't. Someone asked, could we do it with motorized faders? Which, unfortunately, sorry, no. We, so yes, you do have to remember which ones are up. But when you come back out, even if they are physically down, they will still be lighting up. So you know which ones are firing. And what I've found is if I'm performing with it, if I forget which ones are up, which I try not to do, but you know, we're only human. When I come back up, I'm just kind of looking, okay, which ones are lighting, and I'm going to bring them back up, kind of physically, because I know roughly where I had placed them.
Yes.
And of course, if you pull down a note that you hadn't selected probabilistically, you've still applied the offset to it. So when you bring that up, maybe later in the performance, it will still be dropped down.
Yeah, see, I was trying to remember. I didn't quite remember. Here's a question for you. How about a momentary button? As in, because what I can see would be interesting is that you're playing on the main page. If I could hold something which then allows me to access that note and then release, rather than going into a mode and coming back out again. Do you see what I mean?
That's the standard way you do it, actually. Oh. So if you come out, actually, which you have, I think. Yeah, you are. Sorry,
I'm just hitting buttons randomly now.
Sorry. Okay, so it's in sort of ordinary mode. All you do is just hold down that button and you wiggle the thing that you want to happen. That is momentary mode.
So what, with the loop button, you mean?
Yeah, just hold down loop and pull the slider.
Yeah, got it. Oh, well, that's bloody brilliant. For a minute there, I thought I found
and now you've got
a
nice kind of... Oh, you've got to get very early in the morning. So you've now got a nice kind of almost tonic dominant thing going on with the C and the G that you've dropped down.
Yeah.
Okay, should we do some different tracks?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that.
Right.
So the new edition, the thing that I didn't have before, because I had the original Sonic version of the generator, is this expander thing here. Look at this.
Yes.
Now, from what I can see, it gives you an extra 3 channels of CV and trigger envelope stuff going on, and then you've got 4 buttons in order to, I'm finding, switch between different layers of stuff.
That's right. That's right. That's basically it. They are obviously all linked to the same clock, but other than that, they're completely independent. So their loop length, their loop status, all of their probabilities, their mute status, and so forth. All of that is totally independent across the 4 tracks. So you can have totally different things going on at any time.
Yes.
If we bring up the second track, do you want to do it the sneaky cheaty way or the hard graft way from scratch?
Oh Lord, I don't know. I mean, because
let's if we work for our supper first, and then
Okay,
I'll show you the cheaty way, because you've got 3 layers up. So just hit B. There you go. So what that's telling you now is that you're on B.
Yeah.
A is doing stuff. It's got stuff loaded on it, which is why it's flashing. And if you look at the output of A, which it actually is, of course, is on the main unit, you can see that that's flashing. So that's telling you that A's got stuff loaded on it and it's firing. It's not muted.
Okay.
But you are on B because B is solid.
Yes.
But because you're probably setting stuff up ready for B to play, it's currently muted, so you won't hear anything from B unless you want to.
Oh, I see.
So that you can, I suppose it's a little bit like a Q mode on a DJ mixer, right? So you want to kind of get it doing what you want before it goes to front of house.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes complete sense. So I would, for instance, because I have another oscillator wired in over here, the even VCO, and if I were to put in similar notes, then it will be playing a similar on a similar scale to each other, assuming they're remotely in tune. So, you know,
Yes,
I know that I've got that minor going on, and I had a C and a bit of a D and a G. So if I start with those, I can always change it afterwards.
Yes.
So those are prepared.
Yes, they are. So if you now press B again, it should start playing those. There you go.
Fantastic.
So everything that we talked about with A, of course, is going to be identical with B. So you can now go in and there you go. There you've got it. You've got it. You might want to loop that. So sometimes it's nice having one thing that is noodling and another thing that is looping, because then you have a kind of a constant and a variable, if you like, going at the same time.
So to loop, I press loop and run.
Loop and run. So press loop, hit run, and then fingers off.
So it feels like shift run stop for some reason. Captured. I don't know why that comes to mind.
So it's captured, but it's not looping yet. So just prod loop, and it will go into loop. Hey!
Look at that. That's pretty awesome, isn't it?
There.
All right. Well, I'll bring in the next one then. Yeah, sod this. Let's do.
Oh well, no. We can do the sneaky thing.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh
now.
Damn it! I blew it already.
No. It's fine. Go back to B. Actually, yes, you don't need to do that. Hold B, press C. Now, so what you've now done is you've copied B onto C.
Okay, I haven't actually. I need to.
But now, if you go to C, and you're probably muted there. So if you press C again, C should start. Beautiful. There you go, your work is done. That's wonderful. Remember that you're looped, it's copied the entire state.
Damn it.
So those won't do anything unless and until you cut. There you go. It's doing a Mozartian Alberti bass rather wonderfully.
There we go. I mean, that's, you know, that's only 3 channels, and I've now built out an entire case. I can run this case from this thing, just like this.
Yes, that's the idea. Yeah, and because you don't need the envelopes as well, you can just have VCAs or VCFs or LPGs dispensed with the envelopes, and that's giving you extra space in your case as well.
Yeah.
Oh, what about Pico Drums?
Oh yeah, we could do that. Well, I'm not going to bed tonight. All right, so we can mess it up because we're talking about melody, we're talking about pitch, obviously, but it doesn't have to be anything like that. Of course, you can use it for modulation. You can use it to those voltages to control whatever you like, which is why I suggested I had the Pico Drums plugged in. Let me just see how I'm mapped to that. So I'm going to go, which is this one, blah, 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 blah. We'll forget the Osiris for the moment. And that is the CV. So let's just not plug that in for the minute. Take that one, put it into the trigger. So I'm not going to copy across, I don't think. I'm just going to go to, because I'm, no, or should I? Oh, right, so I'm going to press on D.
Yes.
And that's in ready to go mode.
Yes.
So all it really needs to start with is one thing.
Because of course your pitches are now samples.
Yes. So that's going to kick drum. Let's put in some slightly alternative rhythms. See, it never occurred to me to do that either. So the plan is with this, because it's a bit of a lark, is that we can stick notes into the CV input on the Pico Drums, which is just out of shot. There it is. And if I put in extra notes, I can select different samples. That's the genius.
Exactly. And of course, looping becomes really important here. Someone said it needs more dog bark.
Yeah, we didn't manage to find that. Well, I think we grasp rather the potential of that.
One of the things I found with that is sometimes it's useful to have a really small selection of pitches and actually make use of the compass control, so the 32, 16, 8 foot, 4 foot kind of thing on one note, rather than having a chromatic one. The reason being, just on Pico Drums, they organise in groups of more or less similar sounds. So you've got like a bunch of kits, a bunch of snares, and a bunch of hats, and sometimes they're not differentiated enough so that a few semitones will get you radically different sounds. Sometimes just raising a C and then putting 32, 16, 8 and 4 up gets you kind of just 4 different sounds that you need, and often that's enough actually.
Yeah, so that's now what I've got, just one note up, and then I put up 32 and 16, and that's what's giving me the snare and the kick.
There are requests for gunshots and helicopters and cowbells.
That's up this end of things, isn't it?
It is, yes. just about tuned as well, nicely.
Well, lovely. Now, yeah, that's amazing. That's been so useful. So the other thing was, so muting out of these 4 things. How does one do that?
You just press the button again. So the trick there is to look at the indicator lights underneath the TrEG outputs. So if they're not flashing, then you know it's muted, and you also know it's muted by whether you pushed it. But one of the issues that was tricky to get right was the fact that we've absolutely crammed the chip with everything that can possibly do and used every available leg on there. So there's not room to have like multicolour LEDs to show state. We can only show state through either solid, flash, or off. But there are 4 things you have to indicate. So you have to know: is it on? Has it got stuff loaded on it? Are you focused on it? And is it muted? So you've actually got to use the button state and the TrEG LED in combination to tell are you focused on that track, and is it muted or is it playing?
So it seems to be a double push seems to be the answer to most of it. So it seems like you select it and then you can turn it on.
To it,
yes,
and then you press again to mute.
Yeah,
yes,
or turn
exactly.
it back on. It's the same deal. So it's like a double tap almost. So I'm in B again, so I take that out of loop. I can now do some more things. Now to get into tertiary mode, as you keep calling it, that's mode 3 or layer 3, is that right? That's holding
yes,
run?
That's run. That's right, yes.
Can I momentarily hold it in order to increase?
Yes, it's exactly the same as loop. If you hold and do something in ordinary mode, then that's what you term momentary mode. If you long hold on it, then that's fixed mode.
Gotcha.
So you're looking at attack and decay now.
Yes.
Is that right?
So I just added some decay to the Bufacco VCO. Bring the surface back in. There it is.
I don't know whether you'll want to use it, but it's probably worth saying. You know the individual octave transposes on the note, so you can select a particular note to be dropped or raised by an octave or 2. You can do the same on page 3 with the level. So you can select certain notes to be always louder or certain notes to be always softer. So whatever their TrEG does will be attenuated or amplified. So like if there's an attack and a decay,
Yes.
if you turn down every E flat, for example, a bit, then it would do something more like that.
Right. So you're talking velocity, aren't you? Kinda. You've kind
Essentially,
of
yeah,
stuck
but
velocity in there as well in a Eurorack. How did you do that?
yes, but essentially just tied to each note. Again, it's that Stockhausen idea of foreground and background, and it being another parameterizable aspect of a note that will cue your, well, if you want to get to the neuroscience of it, it cues your brain into creating a different auditory object for it. so that a loud C and a soft C become two separate perceptual objects, and therefore two separate compositional objects that you can then manipulate in a piece.
Lovely. So, I mean, one of the questions that does come up a lot to bring us crashing back down to some kind of reality is that availability is tricky. It takes a little bit of time
Yes.
for people to queue in, and which is a good and a bad position to be in, obviously, as a manufacturer. So what is the current story on your production?
Well, actually, very positive. As of very recently, I think the first thing that we both like to say is just thank you so much to everybody who's supported this, everybody who's said such nice things about it, and actually everybody who's been so incredibly patient waiting to get one. It was a challenging situation that we inherited almost exactly a year ago. We incorporated Stochastic Instruments on the 4th of January 21. So we're just exactly a year old and a year and a week old or whatever. And at that point, the list was already pretty long because there just wasn't the capacity, I think, at Omsonic to make it. We just couldn't fulfill the level of demand. And we just had to be fair to everybody and think, well, look, we can either just make them when we can and put them on the site and people will dive on them, but then that disadvantages people who have waited for ages or people in a different time zone to when we put them up or other. And there is no, the real thing is there is no absolutely perfect solution to that when it's a tiny company and Stuart and I have both got kind of academic posts that constitute our 9 to 5. And so the only way that we thought was either fairest to everybody or least unfair, most equitable to everybody, was to do everything on a first come, first served basis. So you'll be pleased to hear the Omsonic list is not only cleared but well cleared. It was cleared at least, goodness, 3 months ago now, and we are now very, very firmly into people who have come directly to us as SI rather than as Omsonic. And I think it's been, it's now pretty firmly an SI thing, so people know to come to us now. And we're adding people to the list in the order at which they come to us. And if you want one of these, you just go to the site stochasticinstruments.com, and there's a contact form there, and just bung your name on there, and I'll send you an email, and we've got a spreadsheet, and everyone's in order on that. And it just means that we come to you as soon as we get to you. One of them, the things I'm sure everybody's aware of, is I'm not sure we could have picked a worse time to make a company at the beginning of Brexit and a global pandemic and a massive chip shortage, and short of literally the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse coming down, it was probably the worst time to make a company ever. But really thanks entirely to everybody's support and everybody's incredible patience and belief in the product. We've managed to keep things going, and Stuart's done this incredible job of having different versions of the circuit built or designed so that when this chip goes out of production, we can dive on and still make it with exactly the same function set, but with a different chip. So we're really doing everything we possibly can to negotiate all of the different multiple issues that we've got. Some recent stuff has happened, which means that actually we can ramp up production again. So one of my brilliant postgrads, Dan, is making our stuff for doing the surface mount aspect of the design, which is great. That frees the production up quite a lot so that we can get them out faster. and we can make them now pretty much as quickly as we can get hold of the parts and get the surface mount stuff and the through hole stuff manufactured. So there are no longer kind of non-production constraints, should we say, on making them.
And are you hand building where you are, or are you getting a lot of stuff done elsewhere?
I'll pass it to Stuart there, because I mean that's absolutely.
When we first started, it was all hand built. Anybody who had their SIG, it must have been like before September last year. Basically, at that time, it was all handmade. You know, every SIG that is built right here on this desk. So every SIG that's out there came off this desk at some point. And it does take a long time, because obviously Finn and I both have to work around our day jobs to do this. Yeah. We do send the PCBs out, because the PCBs have got some very tightly packed surface mount components on them. We do actually get them put on at the PCB fabrication house. And then when it comes back here, it's only missing 1 or 2 chips. So when I've got a SIG, I put the main microcontroller on myself, along with a couple of other chips that aren't so difficult to get at. And then I used to also put all of the through-hole components on as well. But then when we found fully wired electronics, which is Finn's undergrad Dan, who's been very, very useful, we can send them to him in batches, and he puts the he puts the through-hole components on for us, which is very, very useful, because it frees our time right up. Yes,
I can imagine. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, what sort of changes did you have to go through going from OMSonic to the current version? I mean, hardware-wise.
Well, one of the most notable ones, I haven't actually got an old OMSonic one in front of me, but the old OMSonic one had dual-layer PCBs underneath. It had 2 layers. I've managed to cram it all onto a single PCB, which, as well as making it easier to manufacture, has also made it, I think you called it skiff-friendly, was it, Finn?
Skiff-friendly, yes.
It brings the overall width from top to toe under 32 millimeters, I think it was. I can't remember exactly, but it means it will go in these low-profile racks, which has been quite useful as well.
Yeah, that's a really good feature. Increasingly, as you start to expand into other little cases or other bits and pieces, they don't tend to have the depth as a big rig does. And this really lends itself to being like I've got here in my little case. I mean, as we've been playing with this, I now know that what this case is going to be, because I've recently moved to a twin Arturia case rig for live, which is over there behind me. And I've been wondering what to do with this, because I initially bought this case for live performance, but I just knew that I needed more, and so went for this Arturia thing. But in this thing, with this arrangement of modules, is just perfect. I could set it going, I could play with it, and I could leave it playing, and that would be a lovely thing, you know. And so it works really well in a small place, particularly with the 4 channels. I mean, Jesus, the four layers of stuff within it is great. Absolutely great. I mean, I think trying to pick fault with it is that of course the front panel loses its coherence as the more you play with it, because I've now moved channel D, and now it no longer looks like channel A. And I know through my own experience that I like knobs to stay where they're supposed to be, which is naive and a luxury in the space of Eurorack, but it's something which one just has to cope with, I think. So that's the only thing that would, because we want it to be 4 wide. I want 4 of them, obviously, so I can see them all independently. But that would be another thing, and that's one way of doing it, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, and the fact that it is thin means it will fit in any old case, and off you go. So yeah, that's great. I was talking to you earlier, there was an expander, wasn't there, for the OMSonic one, but the one that you've done has brought more functionality, or slightly different than what was there?
Yeah, I don't think the OMSonic ones had TrEGs. I think they no, hang on, wait, sorry. I can't remember. Maybe they did. But there certainly weren't many of them. I think I don't know that. I think there are a couple of sonic expanders in the wild,
Yeah.
maybe. I think. I know.
I'm
I've got
pretty
one
sure
somewhere.
I ordered one at the time when I bought mine, but it's something that never materialized. I don't quite remember. I remember certainly put my name down for something, but
Mhm.
it was one of those things where you put your name down and it was a year later that you heard anything. So
Sorry.
no, that's all right. I totally understand, and I knew at the time that your man, your Sonic geezer, was just a kid, in his bedroom somewhere, essentially putting together these things. But he's had a few interesting modules out there.
He's done incredibly well, really. I mean, and he makes lovely stuff. There's no doubt about it. I mean, the transistor ladder filter, the really nice filter, they're great modules.
Yes. Well, I think we probably, look at that, we're heading up for 2 hours. You should probably sort of sneak it back. So if people are looking to buy, they can do so. They can pre-order, and you're starting to move things through much better now, which is great. Steve, you're a bit late, mate, but it's been lovely. Go back and re-watch it, because it's been really nice. And now we're probably going to sit here
Steve.
and just listen to the thing, because it's a beautiful experience, I think we've had.
Steve did a brilliant interview with my good friend Matt Ward, again at DBS Institute, fairly recently, sometime last year, I think it was.
I'm going to have to open a beer now, I think. So, yeah, all right. So, sorry, let me get myself back on. So this has been fascinating. Thank you very much for taking us through it. I mean, I've learned a huge amount about this module through this evening that I had honestly had no clue about, and it's brilliant. I now know that I can sit there and play with it and be completely happy. There's a little bit of, I'm going to have to write down a few of the things. I mean, I like the fact that you have onto the front panel here. Let me just bring it up again. You have written stuff. Whoop, wrong way. Always the wrong way. There we go. You see how you've kind of labelled everything very well. It is difficult to see with my eyes, unfortunately, but it is there. And now that I understand what these things are and what they refer to, I'll be able to see it. It will be more obvious to me. It will kind of, I'll see it in my, be able to see it a bit better.
There is a cheat sheet in the manual, and I'm working on a kind of another version of a cheat sheet. The community support has been really, really astonishing. There have been some wonderful ideas. In part, it was that kind of spurred us to do the SI panel. With one thing and another, it took me slightly longer to finalise the graphic design on that. I'm not very graphical, but I think it's come out okay. So we now have a stack of those, and the SIGs are now shipping as standard with that quote-unquote new SI panel on. We still have the Sonic panels in black and blue, so people like the kind of the classic look. We can ship them out with those as well as extra panel sets, so that's no problem. But yeah, the putting the manual on the panel thing, that was a response from people saying, look, I had tried to do it with a version of Phin's panel, but because of the kind of gold writing and stuff, yes, it was really, really small. Not all, but some of that information was on there, but you had to remember too much of it. And I thought, okay, it's we've been going for a year now. It's nice to sort of make our own kind of house style out of it, and that was as good an excuse as any as to put the details on there as well. So that's what we did. But there's a cheat sheet on in the manual. There's another version of that which I'm going to try and get out at some point, which I was working with one of our customers on. And what I've also done is at the end of the manual there are two kind of tutorials. There's the sort of simple tutorial, which sort of does actually pretty much what we did tonight, but just as a look, do that, then try this, then make it do that. And then there's an advanced cookbook where it starts to do all the gnarly stuff, so noise oscillators and pseudo tracks, which we won't have time to go into, but it can in effect do kind of 8 tracks, but you have to read the manual on that.
Okay,
probably.
Well, that gives me something to work on then, perhaps in in a couple of years, I'll have a look at that. I imagine. One thing it would be, I'm thinking, because I'm quite into knob replacement or knob going over the top. Definitely see the more fader over here. Thonk do a range of little knob caps that can go over these sorts of knobs, which just give you that little bit more grip, perhaps, or make them stand out a little bit, because it's difficult to see the lines because you've got the old, Desario hot black on black that lights up black to tell you you've done something kind of panel.
Yes.
Which is a thing. And also on my, not on this Fails, but on the Batumi, I have some transparent knob jewels that go over the top of these light up sliders, which is quite nice, which again makes them slightly more grippable and brings the light up. Just as a thought of things, of additional little mods, perhaps.
A few people actually have tried putting those on. If people have a particular Thonk model or another manufacturer of knob caps, obviously just drop me a line at the site, and we'll see what we can find with those. It's the sort of footprint versus function trade-off, isn't it? So, I mean, it could be bigger, but then it becomes, in a sense, less skiff friendly horizontally rather than depth wise.
Yes, no, totally.
So I don't think there's an issue with it. You can get your fingers in, and I know what you mean. If you've got modules where they're very close together, then it becomes difficult. But yes, a few people have put different knob caps on, and they seem to like that set out. So I think one person did them just for the horizontal row at the top, for the range one, so it made them stand out a bit. That's entirely doable.
Yeah, because there is room. This is the thing. I mean, when things are too tightly packed, it doesn't benefit from a larger knob. It just gets worse. No. But these are suitably placed that that could do something. Anyway, I'm digressing again when really I should be bringing this to the close. So again, as I say, thank you very much for coming on. I love the module, and I'm going to have endless fun playing with that, as I have done in the past, and more so now moving into the future. So thanks very much for coming on. I will do a little bit of thing about what's coming up. So Phin and Stuart, thanks very much. Give everyone a wave.
Thank you so much for having us. Wow.
Yes, thank you very much.
And just stay on the line, so I'll chat to you in a moment when I've just stopped the stream. So where am I? What am I doing? Just check the chat. Hang on, over there. Okay, good. Right, smooth as silk. So yeah, that was Stochastic Instruments. That was fascinating and awesome. I'm just going to pull this up for a second. It's slightly weird, slightly drunk. It's just perfect. I absolutely love it. The discovery of envelopes within that thing is quite a revelation. That's just brilliant. So yes, fun for me. So what's coming up then? So that's live stream number 2. Tomorrow night we have we're talking about electronic sound magazine and electronic music and publishing and what's new and hot in the world of electronic music, and we'll be doing that with the editor of Electronic Sound, Push. That's tomorrow night. Thursday is a little bit in flux. The idea is that I'm doing an interview with Arthur Jolly from Rico Synth, which was going to be exclusively on Gear News' Twitch channel, but it may not be, because through various reasons I might be hosting it myself, so it might just be as we are. But with me doing it on YouTube along with the Gear News Twitch channel. But either way, it'll be sponsored by Gear News, and it'll be great to talk to Arthur. I'm a big fan of his Rico Synth boutique synthesizers, and I've never spoken to him before, so it'll be great to find out what that's all about. And then what day is that? That's Thursday. Then Friday, is the Erica Synths DIY night. So we're building the Erica Synths educational VCO together, which will be fun. And then following into next week, we've got Stephen Noir A Blanc V talking about leaving Eurorack, which is going to be an interesting chat. I've also got Modal Electronics next week, and also a live performance. May no longer have anything else for various reasons. Things are quite not panning out as we expected, but never mind. But so probably on Wednesday is still to be announced. Friday may just be an end of stream party where we'll just get together and talk about how it all went. And with a bit of luck, I'll also have a Molten monthly done by then that we can talk about. So that, I think, is enough. Thanks ever so much for joining us over on Twitch, Facebook, YouTube. Do all the subscribing things if you wish. YouTube is probably the best place for that. And always good stuff in the channel, as they say. So with that, thanks very much for your chat and your comments. I will see you all soon, and I will play the VT. Cheers.